So before we start, I'd like to tell you all a brief story. I'd like you to think about where you were in 1998. Maybe you were getting married, having your first child, graduating from high school or college. This is Rich in 1998. Rich was homeless, prostituting on the streets, smoking crack. Rich was a male sex worker, which is a concept that's foreign to many people. But the thing is, Rich was not the only one. So I'm the executive director of an organization called Project Weber Renew. We are a merger of two organizations, Project Weber and Project Renew, serving sex workers and high-risk men and women in Rhode Island. And so the heart of our work is utilizing a peer-based model where the men and women who do this critical work once walked in the shoes that our clients now wear. So people often ask me, the first question they often ask me is, who are your clients? What do they look like? What are their needs or their challenges? And so I always say that our clients do not look like this. And in fact, our clients are all ages, all races and ethnicities, all genders and sexualities. 80% of our clients have been homeless within the last year. 70% have incarceration histories. 15% are HIV positive, and the vast majority of the rest are at very high risk for HIV through intravenous drug use and condomless sex. The majority of clients have mental health diagnoses, and many clients fall into all of these categories at once. So listen to the way that I have described our clients and talked about them by only what they lack. So I'm here to talk to you about the idea today that this is not all of who they are. This is not all that defines them. Their histories, their pasts very much make the people that they are today, but they are not permanently limited by those pasts. And how can I know that? How can I be so hopeful as to believe that? Because I direct an organization which is founded on the principle of every individual to succeed and the power of those pasts and those histories and pushing and shaping forward their success. So today I want to talk to you about the idea that someone can use their past to create a new future for themselves and others. And specifically, I want to talk about the ways in which peer staff use the very same skills and behaviors that they once used in negative ways to create positive outcomes for our clients. This is our staff. So I'm going to tell you the stories of two of our staff members, Lisa and Rich. Their stories illustrate the very real obstacles facing people as a result of a past of homelessness, incarceration, sex work. But more importantly, their stories illustrate the power of that past in creating new futures for clients. So Lisa was hustling on the streets of Pawtucket and Central Falls for 13 years. She hustled drugs, selling and using. She hustled sex, prostituting on the streets. She was the bane of the existence of the Pawtucket and Central Falls police. They called her the Road Runner because they spent their careers chasing her around and sometimes even catching her. And so between 2006 and 2013, she is met on the streets over and over by Project Renew peer staff. They give her condoms, clean water, clean clothes, basic needs, and they ask her to come into the office and get an HIV test. And she gets the HIV test, and they say, you know, we have other services. Would you be interested in getting into substance abuse treatment? And she's not, and so the staff let her know, when she's ready, the door is always open. So in 2014, Lisa stops using. So she's bored, and she's looking to keep her mind occupied with positive things so she doesn't have time to think about using again. So she comes into the office to volunteer for a year. And as always happens when you do the next right thing, a job opens up. So Lisa's hired, first for a few hours a week, and then it grows to almost half-time. And so she's a peer case manager, and she's working now working to serve the women that she once hustled alongside. So she goes to training after training. She becomes a Narcan train the trainer, then an HIV and Hep C tester. Then she becomes a community health worker. and she's learning and growing, and she's a resource for so many men and women on the streets of Pawtucket and Central Falls. She gets married. She has a relationship again with her family and children. She gets her license back after 16 years, which she was very excited about me telling you all. So one day, Lisa and I go to a meeting with the Chief of Police of Pawtucket and Central Falls in the Chief's office. They're longtime partners of ours. And we sit down across from this big table from them, and they realize who she is, and their eyes sort of widen. And they tell the story of the Roadrunner, and everyone laughs, including Lisa. But it's a true moment for her to savor. After a decade of running from these men, she's sitting across the table from them in some ways as an equal. She's advising them on how to reduce arrests in their cities and how to refer clients to us rather than continuing the never-ending cycle of incarceration and degradation. So she is an expert in many ways, more so than the police. And this is a transformative shift in power for somebody who's seen as less than for most of her life. She is changing the lives of clients and changing the minds of law enforcement who might occasionally start to believe so-and-so will never change. Lisa is using her past to create a new future for clients on the streets of Pawtucket and Central Falls. So now I'm going to tell you another story. This is the story of Rich. We saw his picture earlier. This is Rich Holcomb, who is the founder of Project Weber. So Rich was 14 years old when he started hustling on the streets, homeless, smoking crack, doing heroin, jumping in and out of cars for many years. In 2007, Rich's story took a different turn. Rich was diagnosed with HIV. But rather than causing him to want to give up on his life, Rich's HIV diagnosis inspired him to want to change lives, to save lives, and to advocate for a population that he saw as being at risk, forgotten, and ignored. So Rich got into recovery, and he began handing out condoms and clean needles on the streets of Providence. After years of doing this, he began gathering data on the needs of male sex workers in Providence, and he presented this data to the Rhode Island Department of Health. And in 2013, after years of advocacy, the Department of Health finally funded him to open the country's first drop-in center for male sex workers. So the key is that it was Rich's HIV diagnosis and his willingness to live openly as a person with HIV that caused so many doors to open for him. Rich used the narrative of his past to demonstrate to funders and health administrators about the importance of his work. And more importantly, Rich used the narrative of his past to let other male sex workers know that they were no longer invisible. So as of today, this is Rich now. So as of today, the Weber Drop-In Center has seen 236 male sex workers walk through the doors, and it remains one of only a few drop-in centers in the world for this population. The Renew offices, primarily serving women in Pawtucket and Providence, have seen over 800 clients walk through the doors. So Rhode Island is not unique in these problems. Men and women exist like this in every city across the country and in every city across the world. But the way that we have chosen to address them, and the fact that an organization like this that is peer-led exists to advocate for this underserved population, makes us unique. And it's something that Rhode Island can be very proud of. So through this work, I've learned that the very things that make someone a skilled hustler can make them a skilled health outreach worker. So in a peer model, a person can use those skills to scam or to hustle, or they can use those same skills as a leader and as a charismatic person to inspire as a recovery coach or to facilitate a support group. So who better to connect someone to HIV care than someone who's HIV positive and was once out of care themselves? Who better to train someone on the street to use Narcan than someone whose own life was once saved by Narcan? Who better to run support groups for male sex workers than a former male sex worker who got out of the life and became an advocate? We have a transgender outreach project that we just started last year. And this project, once again, has shown us that the power of people seeing themselves reflected in the staff cannot be understated. For a client to walk through the doors and to see a trans woman of color, or a gay man who's public about his HIV status, or a Latina survivor of sex trafficking, and see themselves, it's life-changing. So the question that I've often received for the past dozen or so years is, how did you get involved in this work? And the implicit question is, are you a peer? And so people are so curious as to why somebody who does not look like the stereotype of a sex worker or a person who's experienced homelessness or HIV would dedicate their professional career and in some ways their life to this population. And so my story is that I was working in Pawtucket in the Barton Street neighborhood on the border of Pawtucket and Central Falls. And the neighborhood had identified prostitution as an issue that they wanted to address. And we, perhaps naively, thought that we could make an impact. And so we started with a core group of community partners, and we hired one part-time peer staff person. We had $15,000 budget that first year. And so little did we know that 12 years later, we would grow to an organization that is 10 staff people and 20 times the budget. So although I am not a peer, I have a role to play. I've always believed in justice for marginalized populations, and it's been one of the driving forces in my life since I was very small, and I thank my parents for that guidance. And so I believe my role is to support and guide the work of these incredible men and women as they save lives and change the world. So to all of you here who might say, okay, how can I help? I'm not a peer. How can I help a peer organization? I'm not in substance abuse recovery. How can I help people who are in recovery? I would say three things. First, what is your strengths? What is your history? And how can you use that to help an organization like ours or to help clients like ours? If you are an accountant, you can use your skills, your accounting skills, and volunteer in an organization like ours and save us an enormous amount of money that we can invest back in our clients. If you are a young person with a huge social media following, you can host a drive, a fundraiser, an underwear drive, a toiletries drive, and donate the proceeds to our clients. If you are a teacher, like my mother, and you can help us with to provide tutoring for low literacy clients, which my mother has done for the last 2.5 years. So secondly, I would say, how can I see others from a strengths-based perspective? So if I spent all day lamenting the fact that my staff person, Sally, does not have computer skills, I might miss the fact that Sally is universally beloved and knows everyone in Providence. So if I simply pair Sally up with a young intern to capture her efforts on the computer, I have the best of both worlds. And likewise, if I felt frustrated with frequently absent Bill, who has a lot of doctor's appointments, I might miss the fact that Bill's doctor's appointments give him the day-to-day perspective that we need when working with people with HIV and working to implement change and advocacy for people living with HIV. So these are not merely odd examples. These are everyday choices that we make when we work in service of marginalized populations. And finally, when asking why people do the things they do, why they make seemingly unsafe and destructive choices, we need to ask ourselves, we need to look deeply at issues, systemic issues, such as racism and poverty and homophobia, and ask ourselves, what can we do to remedy these issues, and not simply the issues that can be fixed with a Band-Aid. Because when we work together to remedy those deeper issues, we will create a better future for peers, clients, you, me, everyone. So in the beginning, I asked you to think about where you were in 1998. So now it is 2017, and I'm here on stage, and you're here in the audience watching this talk, but I'm not here by myself. I'm here as a member of a team, a group of people, incredible people, doing incredible work every single day. And so I'd like to bring them on stage with me, and their pasts and their hard work have led them to this moment, receiving applause in front of 1,000 people.